Bitcoin is it's back above 10,000, right? And I mentioned on Twitter, the last 3 times it was above 10,000, it got killed. Although the last time it was only 15%, but the 2 times before that, it was like 35%, 60%. So the question is the 4th time the charm for Bitcoin?
Listen,
it's put up or shut up for Bitcoin. It's got to hold 10,000 now, don't you think? But if you take a full 52 weeks, a full year, Bitcoin is like flat. I think it's still slightly down, whereas gold's up 30%. The dollar index is tanking tonight. The dollar index has a 93 handle on it now. So it was at 103 at the peak in March. It's now below 94. Look at the euro. The euro is above 117. Dollar's getting killed against the yen. So this is, a big deal. The weak dollar, people are trying to get out of the dollar. I think the dollar is going to crash. When this, millennium began in the year 2000, the Dow was up around 10, 11,000, something like that. And so now it's not quite triple because it's 25,000. When this millennium started in 2000, gold was under 300. Gold is now almost $2,000 an ounce. So the stock market measured in gold is substantially lower than it was 20 years ago. But this is just getting started. It's about to get killed in terms of gold, right? This is a brand new move up. Gold got, topped out in 2011 at 1,900. And the only reason gold stopped going up was because people were dumb enough to believe the Fed, that they had finished, that they were going to reverse monetary policy. They were going to normalize rates. They were going to shrink their balance sheet. People believe that. Here we are a decade later. Now people know that was a lie. It's never going to happen. We're printing forever. It's 0% forever. So now the bottom's going to drop out of the dollar. I think gold's going to go through the roof. I have no price target because there's no floor on the dollar. I mean, gold can go to infinity because the dollar can go to 0. But here's a question I have for you on Bitcoin, because one of the things I've been hearing about Bitcoin is like the new gold. It's going to take gold's market share, right? Bitcoin is better than gold. It's superior. So if that's really true, why is gold making new highs and not Bitcoin? And if Bitcoin's going to take gold's market share, why isn't it doing it now? Why are people buying gold when they should be buying Bitcoin? If you want a faster horse than gold, why not just go for silver? Look at silver is up now over $1 tonight. We're now over $24 an ounce. Silver has doubled in price since the March low, more than double. Silver is beating Bitcoin because Bitcoin crashed. Silver didn't crash as much as Bitcoin, but silver coin, why not just buy silver? Why take a chance? Look, Bitcoin for the last year, right, as gold's been going steadily higher, Bitcoin has gone sideways because every time it gets to 10,000, it gets clobbered. So it hasn't gone anywhere. Bitcoin made its high in December of 2017. Where was gold in December of 2017? Where was gold when Bitcoin was at 20,000? Gold has steadily increased during that time period, and Bitcoin hasn't made a new high. There's sound money. I don't think Bitcoin is sound money. I think Bitcoin has some of the properties that made gold the commodity good as money. Okay. But it doesn't have any of the commodity properties that qualified it to be money in the first place. No, it doesn't have any, because you can't do anything with Bitcoin. You can't. Gold is an industrial metal, and it's used in jewelry. There's all sorts of for gold. There are no use cases for Bitcoin. But okay, if I own a Bitcoin, can I take the power out of that Bitcoin and power my house, or can I use it to power my? But how? I can attach my Bitcoin to my house. It's secure. I'm not a jeweler, but I have the gold. I could sell it to a jeweler, whatever I want. Have you ever done that? Buying it. Well, have no, I've done that. I'm holding on to my gold right now. It's going to go up in value. But look, if I wanted, not making anything in your Bitcoin, you haven't made any money in 2.5 years. But how do you know, Anthony? How do you know that 20,000 wasn't it? That wasn't the peak of the bubble, and now we're just deflating? How do you know? But the reason I knew that gold had not peaked was gold has been rising against the U.S. dollar ever since the Federal Reserve came into existence. In fact, in the initial price of gold, I tweeted this out yesterday. The initial price of gold that when in 1792 under the original Coinage Act was like $19.22 an ounce. So we're now officially 100 times higher. The U.S. dollar has now lost 99% of its original value. So I knew that long trend that had been going on for so many years was going to continue. You don't have that kind of history with Bitcoin. Bitcoin didn't come on the scene until 2009, 2010, around sound money. The properties that Bitcoin shares with gold are the medium of exchange, in the unit of account. Here's a point. So let's say that in 2 years, right, Bitcoin is at 1,000. Let's just say that, right? It's at all the way down to 1,000, and gold is at 3,000. You'd still be able to make the argument that since Bitcoin started, it's beating gold. You can make the exact same argument you're making now and say it's the best performing asset of the last 12 years, whatever it is. It has this great return, but it would only be 1,000. See, there was this crypto hedge fund in the UK that just shut down because there was no institutional demand. They couldn't find investors that were interested in cryptocurrencies. The central banks are buying gold. They don't own any Bitcoin. They own a lot of gold, and they're buying more every day. Why would they go to Bitcoin and take a chance on that when they have a tried and tested monetary asset that's already on their balance sheet, that's a tier one asset, like gold? I mean, the world has operated on the gold standard for long before it ever operated on a fiat standard. I'm talking about when the dollar crashes, which I think it's beginning to do right now, and all of a sudden the global monetary system is turned upside down, and we have we're in a crisis because the dollar is no longer adequate as the primary reserve. And so if you have the euro and you have the yen and you have all these other smaller currencies that aren't even reserve currencies, because at least the euro is the second most held currency, but you take a lot of these smaller currencies and they have dollar reserves, they have euro reserves or yen, but now the dollar is in question because if you're backing your currency with dollars, but now the dollar's in free fall, you have nothing backing your currency. So you need to find something to replace the dollar with to say, hey, have confidence in my currency because it's backed by something. Well, back it with is gold. They're not going to say, hey, don't worry about our currency. We got it backed by Bitcoin. That's not going to instill confidence. No. People will reject all fiat currencies and just choose to conduct commerce in Bitcoin. I don't see how that's going to happen because I think that if that many people tried to use Bitcoin, the cost of the transactions would be prohibitively high, and the Bitcoin is not stable enough to price goods and services directly in Bitcoin. But what I'm talking about isn't that. I'm talking about the world's central banks, all these countries all around the world that have their own fiat currency. They're not going to abandon that fiat currency, but they have to find something else to back it with so that it maintains stability and so that their citizens have confidence in it. Right now, it's backed by dollars. But if the dollar is in free fall and people lose confidence in the dollar, these other fiat currencies need to be backed by something. And what I think they're going to get backed by is gold. Governments are going to turn to gold. They're never going to turn to Bitcoin. Now, you can argue that individuals on their own might turn to Bitcoin, but the countries, first of all, that's not going to a gold standard isn't going backwards, right? Gold, that would be an improvement. We'd be going forwards. But they're not talking about it now because they don't realize that there's going to be a dollar crisis. I'm not talking about what they've been talking about in the past. I am speculating on what they're going to do when they get blindsided by a dollar crisis that they didn't expect. Now, yes, central banks have been worried about a dollar crisis. That's why they've been buying up all this gold the last few years. They didn't really know when it was going to hit. I think we're on the verge of that crisis now. So that's what's going to turn the conversation away from, a digital version of their own fiat currencies to what are we going to replace the dollar with? How do we bring back stability to the global monetary system that is now in collapse because the dollar is crashing and there's nothing the Federal Reserve can do to stop it? Because the only way we can stop the dollar from crashing is to crash the economy, is to let interest rates go way up and to force the U.S. government to cut spending. Some people who are buying Bitcoin because they think a weak dollar and all this money printing is going to cause people to go into Bitcoin. And so they're buying Bitcoin, right? And that's the same reason that I'm buying gold and that other people are buying gold. But the key is, I think there's still a lot of people in Bitcoin that want out. I think well, every time that Bitcoin has been above 10,000, somebody is selling it. I mean, there has been sellers that keep coming into the market despite all this good news, all this money printing and 0% rates and a pandemic and recession. No, gold's been going up consistently. Bitcoin is not. Bitcoin, and what, you know, I'm sure, Anthony, if a year ago, 2 years ago, we had a conversation, I told you, hey, in July of 2020, right? We're going to be at 0% rates, QE4, massive recession, all this money printing, $4 trillion deficits. Gold's going to be at 1,900. Silver's going to be at 24. Where's Bitcoin going to be? You would have been like, oh, 50,000, 100,000. You wouldn't have been saying, oh, Bitcoin will be at 10,000. There's no way you'd have thought it would still be here at 10,000. But I agree with you that the supply of Bitcoin is finite, assuming you ignore all the competing cryptocurrencies and all the forks and stuff like that. But so you know exactly what Bitcoin supply is going to be. Yep. What you don't know is what the demand is going to be, because the demand will evaporate. I think the chances of Bitcoin hitting 20,000 are a lot better than, you know, it getting to the market cap of gold. I mean, I just, Peter, if the people who have been selling Bitcoin, if they back away, if they stop selling, right, the new buying could come in and it could drive it back up to 20,000. If the sellers back away, I don't know if they're going to, because I mean, you still got all these people that came into Bitcoin at a much lower cost basis that want to cash out. I mean, they're looking to sell into any kind of hype. The Bitcoin benefits from it to the extent that people perceive that Bitcoin is a safe haven from a weak dollar. The dollar is going to get a lot weaker. See, the people in the Bitcoin community who are worried about inflation and a weak dollar and big deficits, they're 100% right. I agree with them 100%. And, you know, I think it's funny, too, because you'll find some of these guys in the mainstream, like some of these guys on CNBC, you go on there and they somehow they become pro-Bitcoin, but they're not anti-dollar. They think everything is great. They're you know, the U.S. economy is great, the stock market is great, the Fed, those guys are geniuses. But then they're into Bitcoin. Doesn't even make any sense. I mean, legitimately, if you think the Federal Reserve is doing a great job and the dollar is sound, it makes no sense for you to be in favor of Bitcoin. It's only if you believe the dollar is not sound and is going to lose value and that we're printing too many dollars and inflation is coming. That's when, you know, you could go to Bitcoin. I just think people who are going, they're not going to suddenly discover this huge cache of gold. And in fact, gold miners, because gold has been so cheap for so long relative to the production costs, there haven't been new gold mines. There haven't been new discoveries. I mean, this is kind of unique. We've gone a long time without a major discovery. So there's a real supply constraint. And if you look at how much gold central banks own right now relative to total reserves, it's very low by historical standards.